Mark walked slowly through the broken streets of the ruined colony. The sky was covered with smoke, and the air smelled of fire and metal. Buildings stood half destroyed, and pieces of walls lay scattered on the ground. He carried his rifle close, though he knew that a single man could not do much if enemy patrols found him. Still, he could not abandon the search. His orders had been clear. Look for survivors, protect who you can, and report back when possible. But in this silent city, it seemed like no one was left alive. He moved carefully past a collapsed tower. His boots crunched on shattered glass, and each sound felt too loud. He stopped at a doorway and checked inside. Nothing but shadows and dust. Mark muttered to himself, another empty place. He kept moving forward, eyes scanning both the ground and the rooftops above. The alien empire had claimed this colony weeks ago. Human forces had fought hard, but they had been pushed back, leaving only small scattered squads behind. Mark was one of those left behind, but his squad was gone. Now it was only him. He reached a wide street where burned vehicles stood frozen like skeletons. The silence was heavy, almost painful. For a moment, he thought he saw movement. He crouched and aimed his rifle. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a figure appear at the far end of the street. The figure was tall and covered in heavy armor, the kind only the alien soldiers wore. Mark's heart pounded. He had walked into enemy territory without even knowing it. The armored figure raised a hand. Suddenly, more shadows moved from both sides. Mark realized he was surrounded. The aliens had set a trap, and he had walked right into it. They closed in, their weapons glowing faint blue in the dim light. Mark gritted his teeth. Running was pointless. He stood tall, refusing to crouch like prey. If this was the end, he would face it with open eyes. The tallest of them stepped forward. Her armor was different, black and silver, decorated with markings that showed command. Even before she spoke, Mark understood she was their leader. Her voice was sharp yet calm. "Human, you stand in my territory. Do you know what that means?" Mark met her gaze through the glowing visor. "It means I am surrounded, I suppose." He tried to sound steady, though his heart was racing. The alien soldiers around him growled at his words, but their leader raised her hand, silencing them. She stepped closer. "What is it that you want here? Why are you alone in a place that belongs to us now?" Her tone was not just angry. There was curiosity in it too, as if she was studying him. Mark thought for a moment. Any ordinary soldier would beg for mercy or make excuses. But something inside him refused. He remembered how his people had suffered, how his squad had fought to the last man. He would not give her the satisfaction of seeing him afraid. He looked directly at her visor and said, "You ask what I want. I want you." His words came out steady, though part of him was unsure why he even said them. Maybe it was defiance. Maybe it was humor in the face of death. Maybe it was both. The street grew silent. The alien soldiers shifted, confused. Some hissed, some stepped back, unsure how to react. Their leader stood very still. Then she tilted her head slightly, as if surprised. "You dare say that to me?" she asked. Mark shrugged. "Why not? If I am going to be your prisoner, I may as well be honest. I am tired of war. Maybe what I want is not weapons, not escape, but you." He let a small smile touch his face, though it was more of a challenge than a joke. The soldiers around them whispered in their strange language, but their leader silenced them again. She studied Mark as if trying to read his soul through his eyes. She was not used to this. Others feared her, bowed to her, begged for life. This human gave her something else. Boldness. Humor. Defiance. Finally, she said, "You are either very foolish, or very brave. I cannot yet decide which." She gestured, and two of her soldiers stepped forward, seizing Mark's arms. He did not resist. He knew fighting now was useless. But he kept his chin high, refusing to show weakness. The leader turned and began walking away. "Bring him," she ordered. They marched him through the ruined streets toward their base. Along the way, Mark noticed how the alien soldiers glanced at him, some with anger, some with confusion. He had said something no human had ever dared to say to their commander. And though he was now their prisoner, part of him felt he had already won something small, something important. He had kept his spirit unbroken. When they finally reached the enemy command post, a massive structure of black metal rising from the ruins, Mark was pushed inside. The leader removed her weapon and set it aside before turning to face him again. Her visor reflected his own face back at him. "You interest me, human," she said. "Most of your kind cry for freedom or curse our names. But you spoke differently. Why?" Mark gave her the same steady look. "Because humans do not break so easily. You can take our cities, you can burn our homes, but you cannot take the spirit inside us. That is something you will never understand." Her visor hid her expression, but he could sense the shift in her silence. For the first time, she did not look at him like prey. She looked at him like a puzzle, one she could not yet solve. And that, he realized, might just keep him alive a little longer. Mark sat on a metal bench inside a chamber that felt more like a prison than a room. The walls were smooth and dark, glowing faintly with alien markings. The air was heavy, cold, and silent. Two alien guards stood at the door, their weapons glowing softly. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, and tried to calm his breathing. He was alive, at least for now, though he knew that could change at any moment. The door opened, and the tall armored figure entered. The soldiers at the door straightened immediately. She moved with quiet authority, each step echoing against the walls. Her presence filled the room. Mark could feel her eyes on him even though her visor hid her face. She stopped a few steps away, studying him like one studies a strange animal that does not behave as expected. "You spoke boldly," she said. Her voice was calm but carried weight. "When I asked what you wanted, you said you wanted me. Do you understand what you said?" Mark leaned back, resting against the wall. "I know what I said. It was a joke, maybe. Or maybe it was just the truth. Either way, I meant it." The alien commander tilted her head slightly. She seemed almost amused, though it was hard to tell behind the armor. "Humans beg for their lives when captured. They cry for freedom or they curse us. You did not. Why?" "Because fear does nothing," Mark replied. "If I am going to die, begging won't change it. If I am going to live, then I might as well live as myself. Humans are like that. We do not kneel unless we choose to. Even if you chain us, you cannot chain our spirit." The commander stood in silence, as though weighing his words. Finally, she stepped closer. "You have spirit, human. Too much spirit, perhaps. I should end you here and now. But I find myself curious. You are different. And difference interests me." She turned her head toward the guards. Take him to the upper chamber. He is my prisoner now. No one is to touch him. The guards hesitated, surprised, but obeyed. Mark was escorted through narrow halls of metal and light. Alien soldiers stared at him as he passed. Some hissed with anger, others looked at him with confusion. A human inside their fortress was rare. A human prisoner under the direct watch of their commander was unheard of. He was brought to another chamber, this one wider and brighter. A single table stood at the center. The guards left him there, and after a moment the commander entered again. She dismissed the guards with a wave of her hand until only the two of them remained. She sat across the table from him, her armored hands resting calmly before her. "What is your name, human?" she asked. "Mark," he answered without hesitation. "And yours?" She was silent for a moment, as if considering whether to answer. "Serena," she finally said. "Commander Serena of the 3rd Legion." "Serena," Mark repeated. He nodded. "That is a strong name." Her visor tilted slightly, almost as if she was surprised he spoke to her so casually. "You speak as though we are equals," she said. "Do you not realize you are my prisoner?" Mark leaned forward. "Yes, I know. But being a prisoner does not change what I am. You have power over my body, but not over my words, not over my mind." Serena's silence stretched. For a long time she simply watched him. Mark held her gaze, refusing to look away. Finally, she spoke again. "You are not like the others. Most humans tremble when they see me. You stand steady. Why?" "Because I have nothing to lose," Mark answered. "I lost my squad. I lost my city. If I am still here, it is only because I refuse to fall. That is what it means to be human. We keep standing, even when everything is broken." For the first time, Serena leaned back in her seat, as if his words reached somewhere inside her armor. She was silent again, but it was not the silence of anger. It was the silence of thought. Finally, she said, "Perhaps that is why your people fight so fiercely. You are weaker than us, but harder to break." Mark gave a small smile. "Maybe that is why you are curious. Maybe part of you wants to understand why humans do not give up." Serena stood, tall and imposing once more. "Perhaps. Or perhaps I only want to see how long you can keep that spirit before it burns out. Either way, you will remain here under my watch. No other will decide your fate but me." The next days passed slowly. Mark was not kept in chains, but guards always watched him. He was fed simple meals, though the food was strange to his tongue. Sometimes he was brought before Serena, where she questioned him not about military secrets but about his people. She asked why humans laughed even in pain, why they sang songs even in war, why they built homes on worlds that seemed unfit for life. Mark answered honestly each time, telling her that humans lived because they chose to, not because life was easy. The more she listened, the more her questions changed. At first, she spoke like a commander studying her enemy. But over time, her words carried something else. Curiosity. Wonder. Even respect. Her soldiers began to whisper among themselves. Some feared she was growing weak. Others wondered if she had found some hidden strategy in him. But none dared question her openly. One evening, Serena came to his chamber alone. The guards did not follow. She stood before him, tall and silent, her armor reflecting the light. Mark looked at her calmly. "More questions?" he asked. Instead of answering, She stepped closer. When you said you wanted me, was it only a joke? Mark thought for a moment. At first, yes. But now I think maybe it was not. Maybe I wanted to see the real you. Not just the commander, not just the armor. The person inside. For a long moment, Serena stood still. Then, without a word, she reached up and touched the clasp at her neck. With a soft hiss, her helmet lifted. She set it aside, revealing her face for the first time. Her eyes were sharp, glowing faintly, but they were not cruel. Her features carried strength, yet also something more. Curiosity. Humanity, in a way he had not expected. Mark stared, not with fear but with respect. Serena looked at him, waiting for his reaction. Finally, he said softly, "Now I see you." The moment Serena set her helmet aside, the room felt different. Mark had expected something terrifying or strange, but her face was not what he imagined. Her eyes glowed faintly, like two small stars, but they were not cruel. Her skin carried a silver tone, smooth yet scarred in places that spoke of many battles. Her expression was calm, controlled, yet there was a spark of curiosity that refused to hide. Mark leaned back slowly, taking her in. He did not speak right away. For the first time, he realized she had chosen to reveal herself. That alone was more important than any words. Serena held his gaze, as if testing him. Would he flinch, would he stare in fear, or would he remain steady? "You see me now," she said at last. Her voice was softer without the helmet, though it still carried strength. "Few humans have looked at me without trembling." Mark nodded. "And now you see me, too. Not just a prisoner, not just an enemy. Just a man." Serena tilted her head slightly, studying him. "You speak as though you and I stand on the same ground. Yet I command legions, and you are one soldier." Mark smiled faintly. "That may be true, but on this ground, in this moment, we are just two people in a room. No armies, no weapons. Only us." His words seemed to unsettle her, not in anger but in thought. She had spent her life behind armor, behind commands, behind the weight of duty. Few, if any, had spoken to her like this. For a long time, silence stretched between them. Finally, she reached down and pressed the clasps along her chest plate. The armor hissed softly as it unlocked. Piece by piece, she removed it, setting each heavy part aside until she stood in the simple dark uniform beneath. Mark watched quietly, understanding this was no small act. For someone like her, armor was more than protection. It was identity, power, the face she showed to the world. To remove it before him meant she was letting him see what no other enemy had ever seen. Without the armor, Serena looked less like a towering figure of command and more like a person. Her movements were still sharp, but they carried a weight of exhaustion, the kind only years of battle could bring. She folded her arms and faced him directly. "Do not mistake this for weakness. I reveal this only because I want to understand. You interest me, human. You confuse me." Mark nodded slowly. "I will not mistake it. I know strength when I see it. And showing yourself like this is another kind of strength." Her eyes narrowed slightly, though not in anger. "Strength in removing protection. That is not how my people see it." "Maybe that is the difference," Mark replied. "Your people see armor as power. My people see truth as power. When you remove the mask, when you let someone see the real you, that takes courage. For the first time, Serena did not answer quickly. She looked away, her gaze settling on the wall, as if she was searching for meaning in his words. Then she turned back to him. You said you wanted me. Was it only a trick to keep yourself alive? Mark leaned forward slightly. At first, yes, maybe it was a way to survive. But now, looking at you, I think it was more than that. I think I wanted to see what was behind the armor. Not just the steel, not just the commander, but the person. Her eyes glowed brighter for a moment, as though stirred by something inside her. She stepped closer until she stood just across from him. And what do you see now that you have what you wanted? Mark held her gaze firmly. I see someone strong, yes, but also someone who is more than what her empire tells her to be. I see someone curious enough to ask questions instead of only giving orders. I see someone who might be more human than she realizes. A quiet laugh escaped her lips, sharp yet almost soft. You are bold, Mark. Bold enough to speak to me in ways no one else would dare. That is humanity, he said with a small grin. We say what we feel. Sometimes we joke, sometimes we challenge. But we always speak as ourselves. The door opened suddenly, and one of her soldiers stepped inside. The alien froze upon seeing their commander without armor. His eyes widened, and he quickly lowered his gaze, clearly afraid. Serena's tone turned sharp. Leave us. Now. The soldier bowed and fled, the door shutting behind him. Mark raised an eyebrow. I take it that is not something they are used to seeing. No, Serena admitted. To them, I am only a symbol, a commander, a figure of war. They do not see me as I am. They cannot. Mark's voice softened. But I can. Her gaze locked with his once more. There was no glow of visor now, only her true eyes, bright and searching. For a long moment, they stood in silence. The war outside the walls seemed far away. In that small room, there was no commander and no prisoner. Only two people caught in a strange and fragile moment of trust. Finally, Serena turned and picked up her armor once more. She did not put it on, but she held it in her hands. I should end this war, not waste time speaking to an enemy, she said, though her voice carried doubt. Maybe speaking to me is not wasting time, Mark said. Maybe it is the start of something your empire never expected. Serena placed the armor down carefully and stood tall. Perhaps. But if that is true, then both our worlds will change. And change is dangerous. Mark nodded. Dangerous, yes. But sometimes it is the only way forward. Serena looked at him one last time before leaving the chamber. Mark sat quietly, letting out a slow breath. He knew the war was far from over, but something had shifted. For the first time, he had seen the person behind the armor. And for the first time, Serena had allowed herself to be seen. The fortress buzzed with whispers. Soldiers of the alien legion moved through the halls with rigid discipline, but beneath their controlled steps was unease. They had seen their commander act in ways none expected. Rumors spread like wildfire, carried from guard to guard. Some said she was growing weak, that the human prisoner had poisoned her mind. Others claimed she was only studying him, waiting for the right time to use him against his own people. None dared question her openly, but doubt grew among them like cracks in stone. Mark could feel the change as well. Each time he was escorted through the fortress, the stares were sharper, heavier. Some eyes burned with hatred, others with confusion. He knew he was alive only because Serena had decided it. Without her, he would already be gone. That thought did not frighten him as much as it should. Instead, it made him wonder why she was willing to take that risk. One evening, she called him again to her private chamber. The room was dimly lit, quiet, and guarded from the outside. She stood near the window, looking out at the ruined city below. Her armor rested on the table, left aside as though she no longer needed to wear it every moment. She spoke without turning. "They whisper about us." Mark stepped forward slowly. "I noticed. Your soldiers are not good at hiding their stares. They fear what they do not understand," Serena said. She turned to face him, her glowing eyes sharp yet thoughtful. "They see me speak with you. They see me without armor. To them, it is as if I have betrayed my own image." Mark crossed his arms. "Maybe what they fear is not betrayal. Maybe they fear change." Her gaze lingered on him, searching for meaning. "Change is dangerous. It breaks the order we built. My people live by order. Without it, we fall into chaos." "And yet here you are," Mark said, meeting her eyes firmly. "Standing without your armor, speaking to your enemy. You already changed, Serena. Whether you admit it or not." She studied him for a long time before finally speaking again. "Tell me something, human. If our roles were reversed, if you held me as your prisoner, what would your people do?" Mark hesitated. "Some would try to use you as a bargaining tool. Some might see you as too dangerous to keep alive. But me? I think I would have done what you did. I would try to understand. Because if we keep seeing each other only as enemies, the war will never end." Her expression shifted slightly, the faintest flicker of something softer passing through her features. She looked away. "Your words are bold. Too bold for a prisoner." Mark smirked faintly. "That is what you said before. Maybe boldness is all I have left." A knock at the door interrupted them. One of her captains entered, bowing deeply. His armor gleamed, but his voice carried unease. "Commander, forgive me, but the generals demand your presence. They grow restless. They ask why the human has not been executed." Serena's eyes darkened, though her face remained calm. "Tell them the human is mine to decide. No one else will touch him." The captain hesitated. His voice lowered. "Commander, some whisper that he has bewitched you. They say you risked the Legion by keeping him alive. Do you question me, Captain?" Her voice cut through the air like a blade. The captain bowed even deeper. "Never, Commander. I only carry their concerns." "Then carry this as well," Serena said coldly. "Any who question my decisions question me directly. And that will not be forgiven." The captain bowed again and left quickly. Silence returned to the room. Mark exhaled slowly. "That sounded serious." "It is," Serena admitted. She walked closer, her steps steady but heavy with thought. "If I continue to protect you, I may lose the trust of my own soldiers. If I give you up, I lose something else. I am torn between two paths." Mark nodded. "You are a leader. Your people see you as armor, as strength. But maybe what they need is more than that. Maybe they need to see the truth." "The truth?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. "Yes," Mark said firmly. "That war will destroy both of us. That fear and control cannot hold forever. You saw it when you spoke to me. You asked questions your generals never ask. Deep inside, you already know this empire cannot last forever." Her silence was deep, but her eyes betrayed thought. She had never spoken of such doubts aloud, never even allowed herself to think of them too long. Yet the human had cracked open something inside her that refused to close again. The following day, the fortress was shaken by another event. Human scouts had entered the outskirts of the ruined city. They launched small raids, striking quickly before disappearing into the rubble. The alien soldiers grew tense, preparing for battle. Mark heard the alarms echo through the halls, saw the soldiers rushing to their stations. For the first time since his capture, he felt the energy of war press close around him again. Serena entered his chamber later, her armor back on, though her visor remained lifted. "Your people are near," she said. Mark stood. "Then you know they will come for me." "They will die if they try," Serena replied firmly. "My legion will crush them." "Or they will fight until the last man," Mark countered. "That is what humans do. You saw it before. We do not stop. We do not kneel." Her jaw tightened. "Why throw away lives for a war you cannot win?" "Because sometimes standing matters more than winning," Mark said. His voice was steady, carrying weight beyond the walls. "If you fight for something bigger than yourself, losing does not mean defeat. That is why humans scare you. Not because we are stronger, but because we never give up." Serena stared at him for a long time, her breathing steady but heavy. She turned away, but not before he saw the struggle in her eyes. She was caught between duty to her empire and something new growing inside her, something she had not felt before she met him. That night, Mark lay on his bed, staring at the cold ceiling. He thought of his squad, of the colony, of all that had been lost. Yet he also thought of Serena, the commander who had removed her armor not only from her body but from her heart, if only for a moment. He did not know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew this: the clash was no longer just between humans and aliens. It was inside her as well, a battle between loyalty and change. And that battle might decide the fate of them all. The fortress never slept. Day and night, alien soldiers moved through its steel halls, weapons humming as they prepared for war. Mark had grown used to the rhythm, the sound of boots striking the ground in perfect order, the way commands echoed from one level to the next. Yet he could feel the tension rising. The raids from human scouts had grown bolder, and the whispers among Serena's soldiers had grown louder. Some no longer hid their anger when they looked at him. He was the human who lived while others died. One morning, alarms shattered the calm. The fortress shook as explosions thundered in the distance. Soldiers ran through the halls, shouting in their strange tongue. Mark's guards moved quickly, pulling him from his chamber and into a secure corridor. He heard the faint sound of gunfire, sharp and steady, coming closer. His heart raced. Humans were striking again, but this time it was different. They were not just scouting. They were attacking. The guards pushed him forward until they reached a larger chamber. Inside, Serena stood in full armor, visor down, sword in hand. She looked every part the commander once more, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Hold the southern wall. Push them back into the ruins. Do not allow them to breach the command level." Her soldiers bowed and hurried away. She turned her gaze to Mark. "Your people are reckless. They strike where they cannot win. They strike because they believe," Mark said quickly. "They know their lives matter, even if the world tells them otherwise. That is what makes them dangerous." Before she could reply, the wall behind them shuddered. Dust rained from above. A group of enemy raiders burst into the chamber, their weapons glowing bright. They must have broken through the lower defense lines and forced their way up. Serena moved fast, her sword slicing through the first attacker in a blur. She fought with deadly precision, but there were too many. Her guards tried to hold the line, but the humans pressed forward, desperate and unyielding. Mark's eyes darted across the room. His guards had left a fallen weapon near the wall, a small rifle dropped in the chaos. Without thinking, he ran toward it. A soldier lunged to stop him, but Mark rolled across the floor, grabbed the rifle, and fired. The shot struck true, dropping the alien raider before it could strike Serena from behind. She spun at the sound, her eyes flashing through the visor. For a moment, surprise flickered across her stance. Mark stood beside her now, weapon in hand, fighting not against her but with her. He fired again, forcing two raiders to take cover. Serena moved like lightning, cutting down another with her blade. The room echoed with the clash of steel and the hum of energy weapons. The battle was fierce, but together they pushed back. Mark's shots drove the enemy into her reach, and her strikes kept them from overwhelming him. When the last raider fell, silence filled the chamber, broken only by their heavy breaths. Mark lowered the rifle slowly. His hands shook from the adrenaline, but his eyes were steady. "I could not just stand and watch," he said. Serena's visor lifted, revealing her face. Sweat glistened along her silver skin, and her glowing eyes burned with intensity. She looked at him for a long moment. "You saved me," she said simply. "You saved me first," Mark answered. "When you could have ended me on the street. I only returned the favor." Her soldiers entered moments later, weapons ready, but they froze at the sight before them. The human prisoners stood armed beside their commander, alive and unharmed. Whispers spread instantly, suspicion clear in their eyes. Serena lifted her blade high. "The chamber is secure. The human fought under my command. Without him, I would not stand here." The soldiers hesitated, unsure how to respond, then saluted quickly before rushing back to their posts. The door closed, leaving the two of them alone again. Serena turned back to Mark, lowering her sword. Her voice was softer now, almost uncertain. "My people will not understand this. To them, you are still an enemy. They will say I am weak, that I let you corrupt me." Mark set the rifle aside and stepped closer. "You are not weak. You are strong enough to see what they cannot. You are strong enough to question." Her glowing eyes searched his face. For the first time, she seemed less like a commander and more like a person standing at a crossroads. "Why would you risk your life to protect me? I am your enemy." "Because you are more than that," Mark said firmly. "I saw it when you removed your armor. I saw it when you asked questions no one else dared ask. You are not just the Empire's commander. You are Serena. And maybe, just maybe, you are the key to ending this war." Her lips parted slightly, as though his words struck deeper than any weapon. She turned away, walking to the window where smoke rose over the ruined city. For a long moment, she was silent. Then she spoke softly. "My generals demanded your death. They said keeping you was dangerous. I refused them. Now you stand here, and I find myself glad I did." Mark smiled faintly. "Maybe fate had a hand in it. Or maybe you already knew I was not just another soldier." Serena placed her sword on the table and removed her gauntlets, letting them fall with a heavy thud. She faced him once more, her eyes steady. "From this moment, you are no longer my prisoner. But you are not yet free either. You walk beside me now, not behind." You will see what I see, and perhaps you will teach me what I cannot learn alone. Mark nodded. Then we walked together. That night, the fortress was calmer. The raids had been repelled, but the whispers only grew louder. Soldiers spoke of the human who fought beside their commander. Some called it betrayal. Others called it strategy. But for Serena, the choice was clear. She had seen him risk his life for her. In that act, she saw something rare, something her empire had never given her. Loyalty not born of fear, but of choice. For Mark, the battle had changed everything as well. He no longer felt like a prisoner waiting for execution. He felt like an ally, though fragile and uncertain. He knew danger still loomed, that both humans and aliens would question this bond. But he also knew one truth. The moment he fought beside Serena, the war was no longer just between their species. It was a war for trust, for change, for a future that might be built together. The fortress seemed quieter after the raid, but it was only the surface calm of a storm not yet finished. Smoke still rose from the southern walls, and soldiers patrolled the halls with sharper eyes and heavier weapons. The tension in the air was clear. Everyone whispered about what they had seen in the command chamber. A human had fought beside their commander. Some believed it was a trick. Others thought it was madness. Mark could feel the weight of those stares each time he walked the halls under Serena's watch. Guards no longer treated him as only a prisoner, but they kept their hands near their weapons, as though ready for him to turn at any moment. He knew their trust was far away, but for now, they obeyed her orders. She had declared him under her protection, and none dared openly defy her. That evening, Serena summoned him to the upper tower. The room was wide and lined with maps of the ruined city below. Energy crystals glowed softly in the walls, casting a pale light. She stood by the window, armor removed, wearing a simple robe of dark silver cloth. The glow of the burning ruins reflected in her eyes as she turned toward him. "You know what the others think," she said quietly. Mark nodded. "They think you are weak for keeping me alive. They think I should have died long ago." Her gaze did not waver. "They are not wrong. My generals speak louder each day. Some demand that I prove my loyalty to the Empire by ending your life in front of them. They say I am blinded by curiosity. Perhaps even corrupted." Mark stepped closer. "Then why keep me here at all? Why take the risk?" For the first time, Serena's voice trembled slightly. "Because you fight with something my people do not understand. You fight without fear. Even in chains, you do not bow. When the raiders struck, you stood beside me when you could have run. I cannot ignore that. You are not like the others I have fought." Mark looked out at the burning skyline. "Humans fight because we must. We do not have empires of steel or fleets across the stars. We only have ourselves, and that has to be enough." Serena studied him in silence, then spoke again. "I am breaking the law by keeping you alive. Soon, I may no longer be able to protect you within these walls. If you stay, you will die. If you leave, you may have a chance, but only if I help you." Mark turned to her sharply. "You would release me? After all this time?" Her expression hardened, but her eyes betrayed something deeper. "I would rather face the anger of my people than watch you be executed for their pride. You saved me, and that is a debt I cannot leave unpaid. But it will not be easy. The fortress is watched. The city is full of patrols. If they catch you, you will not survive." Mark took a slow breath. He knew the risk. But he also knew this was the only chance. Then I have to try. She moved toward the table and spread a map before him. Her finger traced a path through the fortress and into the ruins beyond. There is a passage under the command level. Few know it exists. It was built long ago as an escape route for leaders should the fortress fall. If you follow it, you will reach the old tunnels beneath the city. From there, you can vanish. Mark studied the path, memorizing each turn. And what about you? Serena's hand lingered on the map. I will remain here. If I disappear with you, it will confirm their fears. They will send every soldier in the Empire after us both. But if you escape alone, they may still believe I was betrayed. That is a risk I can endure. Mark shook his head. You will take all the blame. They will strip your command. They may even end your life for this. Her silver eyes met his. A commander must decide who she stands with. For years, I fought only for an empire that demanded obedience. Now, for the first time, I choose differently. If that is my end, then it will be on my terms. The weight of her words pressed on him. He wanted to argue, but he saw the resolve in her gaze. She had already decided. Later that night, Serena led him through the dim halls in silence. Most soldiers were still posted at the walls, preparing for another attack, so the upper levels were quieter. She carried no armor, only a simple cloak that hid her features. Mark followed close behind, his heart pounding with every step. They reached the hidden passage, concealed behind a panel in the wall. She pressed her hand against it, and the metal slid open, revealing a dark stairway that seemed to descend forever. A cold wind rushed out, carrying the scent of earth and stone. This is where our paths divide, she said softly. Mark turned to face her. I may never see you again. Her voice lowered, almost to a whisper. Perhaps. But you will carry what you have seen here. If you live, tell your people not all of us are blind to change. He stepped closer, his hand brushing against hers briefly. You risked everything for me. I will not forget that. No matter what happens, you are part of this now. Whatever future comes, it will not erase this moment. For a long heartbeat, neither moved. Then she stepped back, her cloak swirling in the dim light. Go. Before I change my mind. Mark nodded, forcing himself to turn toward the stairway. He descended into the shadows, his footsteps echoing against the stone. With each step, he felt the weight of her decision pressing on him. She had given him his freedom at the cost of her own safety. At the bottom of the stairs, the tunnel stretched into darkness. He paused for a moment, looking back up at the faint light above. Serena still stood there, a lone figure framed by the hidden doorway. She raised her hand in a final gesture, neither a farewell nor a command, but something unspoken that tied them together. Then the panel closed, and she was gone. Mark turned and walked deeper into the tunnels. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and the ruins of a world at war. But for the first time since his capture, he felt something stronger than fear. He felt hope. And behind him, Serena stood alone in the fortress, knowing she had crossed a line she could never return from. The Empire would see her as a traitor if they ever discovered the truth. Yet for the first time in her life, she did not care. Mark moved quickly through the dark tunnels beneath the ruined city. The air was cold and damp, carrying the scent of stone and earth. Shadows stretched along the walls as he passed, but he kept his focus on the path ahead. Every step echoed, every breath felt heavy, but he knew he had to keep moving. The hidden route Serena had shown him was narrow and twisting, but it led to the safety of the old ruins beyond the city. He paused once, listening. The fortress above seemed far away, but he knew that danger still loomed. Alien soldiers could discover the secret passage at any moment. Yet he felt no fear now. For the first time since his capture, he carried something stronger than survival trust. Serena had risked everything for him, and he would not let her sacrifice be in vain. Hours passed as he moved through the tunnels. He avoided debris and fallen rocks, careful not to make a sound that would reveal his position. Finally, the passage opened into an abandoned section of the city. The ruins stretched wide, broken buildings standing like shadows of their former selves. Fires still burned in places, but the destruction had grown quiet. Mark took a deep breath. The open sky above reminded him why humans never stopped fighting. Even in the ruins, there was life. Even in darkness, there was hope. He moved quickly through the rubble, aware that the Empire's patrols could return at any moment. Each step was careful, but steady. His survival depended on it, but so did the chance to carry Serena's courage forward. Meanwhile, in the fortress, Serena faced the consequences of her choice. Her generals had discovered the hidden passage and learned that Mark had escaped. Fury swept through the command halls. Soldiers shouted, demanding punishment, declaring her a traitor. The weight of her decisions pressed down on her, yet she stood tall. She did not bow, did not flinch, because she knew the truth. She had chosen what was right, not what was easy. You risked the Legion for a human, one general demanded, his voice sharp. Do you realize what this means? You could have been executed. You have dishonored us all. Serena met his gaze. I have acted as a leader, not as a blind follower. The human is not my enemy. He is a reminder that courage and loyalty do not belong only to soldiers of this empire. You speak of honor, but honor is not measured by fear. It is measured by choice. The generals paused, unsure how to respond. Some whispered among themselves, while others scowled openly. The soldiers were watching. Loyalty was tested now not by the strength of arms, but by the strength of conviction. Serena's words carried weight. Some began to see what she saw, the possibility that the war could end if they were willing to change. Far below, Mark reached the outskirts of the ruins. The city's edges were quieter, less patrolled. He spotted a small group of humans waiting, scouts who had come to find survivors. Their eyes widened when they saw him emerge. Mark, one called. We thought you were lost. He approached cautiously, but his smile was steady. I'm not lost. Not yet. The scouts helped him navigate through the ruins, guiding him to safer ground. Every step brought him closer to freedom, but also closer to understanding. Humanity's fight was never just about weapons. It was about standing, even when the odds were against them. It was about choosing to survive with courage, and about inspiring others to do the same. Back in the fortress, Serena made her own move. She gathered soldiers who remained loyal to her, those who trusted her judgment. Together, they prepared to challenge the Empire's rigid rules. The risk was enormous. If they failed, they would all be executed. Yet she knew that change required courage, not obedience. Her soldiers followed her not because they feared punishment, but because they believed in her vision. As dawn broke, Mark and the scouts reached the edge of the colony. The sun rose over the horizon, painting the ruins in light and shadow. Mark stopped and looked back at the city. He knew Serena was still inside, facing the Empire alone, but he felt her presence in his mind, her courage and her choice guiding him forward. Humanity had survived, not because the war was over, but because humans refused to bow. Serena's loyal soldiers rallied around her. The Empire tried to suppress the rebellion within its ranks, but they could not overcome the spirit she had awakened. Her decision to protect Mark had shown others that even the most rigid rules could be challenged. The change began quietly, with small victories and cautious trust, but it was unstoppable. Mark, now outside the city, joined his fellow humans. They looked to him, their eyes filled with hope and determination. He shared what he had learned in the fortress, not secrets of weapons, but the lesson of courage, loyalty, and trust. Humanity's fight was not just survival, it was the power to inspire change in even the most unlikely places. Far away, Serena stood on the highest tower of the fortress. She watched the ruins below, knowing that she had risked everything, but also knowing she had done what was right. The Empire's soldiers still questioned her, still whispered her name, but she held her ground. Her choice had created a ripple that could not be erased. She had shown that even an enemy could be understood, that courage could inspire change, and that the spirit of one human could alter the path of two worlds. Mark smiled as he looked at the horizon. The city was destroyed, but life remained. The human scouts moved beside him, ready to rebuild, ready to fight for the future. He knew the battle was far from over, but he also knew one truth: humanity would never bow, and courage would always shine through the darkest times. And somewhere in the fortress, Serena looked up at the sky. Though worlds apart, both of them shared the same hope, the same resolve. Their choices had changed the future. The Empire could not erase the lessons learned that night, and the courage of one human soldier had reminded all who watched that even the smallest act of defiance could spark a revolution. The story ended not with war, but with the promise of change. Humanity had stood tall. Serena had chosen truth over fear. And in that choice, a new future began, one where courage and loyalty, understanding and trust, would shape the destiny of two worlds.